So moving forward with our next presentation, Highway Bridge Fire Damage Experiences and Fire Resilience Considerations for Bridges with FRP. Our next speaker is Steve Nolan. He is the Senior Structures Design Engineer at Florida DOT. He has been a practicing professional engineer in Florida since 2003. He is the Technical Lead Coordinator for Florida DOT for the implementation of fiber-reinforced polymer reinforcing and pre-stressing, stainless steel pre-stressing, and UHPC for structural applications. Steve has 9 years of experience with the development of design guidance for FRP and stainless steel reinforcing and pre-stressing, 25 years of experience with pre-stressed concrete design and concrete bridge design specification development, and a member of TRP Committee AKB10, Innovative Materials, ACI, AAC, Structural Engineering Institute, and Bridge Engineering Institute. Let's welcome Steve, and I'll hand it.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I'm not just the Senior Structures Design Engineer at Florida DOT. We have a few. All right. Where's the clicker? So my presentation could be shorter if we want it to be. This is a little bit out of my wheelhouse, the fire topic, because essentially AASHTO doesn't really worry too much about fire being a non-occupied structure. For bridges, tunnels are a little bit different, but they have usually active fire suppression systems. But it is a problem. So I'll just go over some of the more recent fires that we've had in my home state, and then also even more recently nationally, just things that are around, and then some considerations of what the bridge community might be interested in pursuing, specifically tailored not just to FRP, strengthened or reinforced structures, but this is probably the worst fire that Florida DOT has experienced in the last 40 years. So typically all the major damage fires that we experience are from vehicle accidents, typically fuel trucks, tanker trucks, either hitting the traffic railing or hitting the columns underneath, and then that fuel spills and that ignites, and then you get potential damage on the deck. If it leaks through the expansion joints, then you'll get all the bearings getting essentially carbonized because they're all mostly neoprene. But so typically the span is toast, and you're typically just replacing the entire structure. These fires are really hot, so being able to resist that to maintain the structure's integrity for putting it back into service is pretty practical. But there are probably things that we can do. So this is St. Petersburg, Florida, and again, deck fire, concrete traffic railing impact. That's why there's a notch out of the railing there. But again, a lot of damage underneath because of the fuel spilling down underneath the bridge. So this was a few more years back than that. Again, we don't really pay. It's not that we don't pay a lot of attention to them, but we don't specifically address them in the code, and we just seem to be being comfortable with just repairing after the fact. And there's probably, I'll get to a reason for that. So this is a new challenge that we've actually experienced a couple of times with homeless encampments under the bridges. And in this case, this was last year, and they just finished the rehabilitation on this bridge. So actually, this was the bridge that was pushed off its foundations during Hurricane Ivan back in 2004. So this is the brand new, well, it's not brand new anymore, it's 20 years old, bridge that replaced. Anyway, the end span was an nice place for the homeless to hang out, and they had accumulated quite a lot of belongings, combustible belongings in their couches, trash cans full of whatnot, and there was a bit of an argument between a couple of the residents there, and so this guy up here, nobody likes you, David. David set fire to one of the other residents' belongings and essentially created quite a challenge for our district maintenance guys. So again, that's those post-stress beams all because of the heat and fire. They had to go back in and restore capacity using FRP, externally bonded strengthening. Now, to prevent that happening again in future, they encased the entire abutment, so now you cannot access underneath the bridge except with, well, anybody can break a lock and key, but it's a deterrent, let's just say, not a guaranteed solution. We're aware probably of I-95 collapse. Again, that was a tanker truck coming off the interstate. Not much you can necessarily do in that situation. The adjacent span was also had to be demolished because it was severely affected. What's interesting in this fire is the pattern of the reinforcing that was essentially left on the exposed spilled concrete. So that necessarily wouldn't be the effect if you had FRP reinforcing as much, but the residual integrity of the wall obviously is compromised. So I think these were cast in place in abutments. We have quite a lot of mechanically stabilized walls that could potentially be impacted as well. So this was an interesting one recently in Canada. A farmer was burning off some crops after harvesting. Ended up escaping to a couple of nearby bridges. But why I made the news was because this crazy driver ended up driving through the smoke across the bridge while it was on fire. So I guess they had a pretty important permit to get to. So this was last week. So this was because of fog. There was a pile up on I-55 in Louisiana. Pretty horrible situation there. Again, there's a deck fire. There isn't as much fuel in this case, so really just the potential for surface smearing, I think in this case. But I didn't get a lot of details since it was so recent, but yeah, there was some freight there involved as well. So we'll see when the engineering reports come out what they had to do there. So just speaking generally, I actually should have split this up into 3 types of FRP reinforcing, but internal reinforcing, GFRP, bars, carbon pre-stress, those are typical things that we might want to consider in the future. Externally bonded, there's been a lot of talk about residual strength. I think it's important to realize that probably unlike buildings, for bridges, we don't, this isn't just a Florida DOT modification, but we don't strengthen bridges unless they can take 110% of the dead load and a proportion of the live load, depending on how many girders you have. So that doesn't account for the reduction in strength of the steel inside the existing beam. But so that's, I think that's the third priority of what we might want to address. And the third one, which I didn't really put up in here, but it's similar to external, is FRP members. So we've got a few proprietary systems out there now that are proposed for vehicle bridges, and there's quite a few pedestrian bridges using truss systems and others. So they're a little more susceptible, I guess, to failure in a fire. Just some statistics here on most of these detail. Oh, I was working on this supplement to this presentation this morning. I didn't have a chat. But the number the number of bridge collapses due to fire, not just the number of fires, is pretty low relative to our other extreme events. But it's interesting that it's actually as significant as earthquake, and we designed specifically for earthquake. But I think the difference there is when you have an earthquake, you end up with a whole region of bridges that are compromised. With a fire, it's usually pretty local, and it's just like one or maybe two bridges. So again, the risk tolerance is a lot greater for fire, I imagine. But food for thought. So this is a presentation from 6 years ago from Dr. Khorasani, again highlighting some other bridge fires in less recent history, since this was 2017. She compiled a list of all the different temperature curves that might be considered for the zone based on European. So she has some things that could be incorporated into any design provisions for bridges. So right now that there is provisions in the National Fire Protection 502 for not mandatory, but requirements for bridges and tunnels. And typically these are what we use for tunnels. To my knowledge, we only have 2 tunnels in Florida, and might have a third one in 10 years. There was one other slide that isn't in here, but I can't remember what it was, but it allows me to be now. So I guess we're really starting from scratch. We don't even have the time, we don't have the temperature. It's not just an issue for FRP, it's an issue for steel as well. So there's plenty of room. I don't think there's a huge urgency in the AASHTO community to address it. But as we start considering multi-hazard events, then maybe they will. So that's all I have. Any questions? Feel free to ask me. It's sparked my curiosity here to maybe engage a little bit more on this topic. Thank you.